Thank you for joining the ESEA team on our monthly office hour. Welcome to a new year. We hope to provide you with some timely information and also address any questions that you may have during this office hour. One update that we wanted to share with you that we have on hand for you today is, if you recall, back in November, we were asking for public comments related to the EdFlex application, which allows some provisions and some waivers to be applied per the state and not having to annually request those waivers from the U.S. Department of Ed. You can see the priority notice, which is hyperlinked on this slide, which I hope one of the teammates will be able to pop in the chat box for you. That priority notice highlights the waivers that we were seeking in the EdFlex application. Thank you so much for all the comments that you provided. We exceeded the 20 plus comments, which is great. It supports the application that we have submitted to the U.S. Department of Education. We have not heard back from the U.S. Department of Education. We do know that we should be hearing statutorily within 120 days. So just to put a timeline to that, that's the beginning of April, give or take, considering the holiday and the winter break that they were closed. But last week, you may have heard that the U.S. Department of Education did award their first approval of the Ed flexibility to the state of Iowa. So I also hyperlinked that information according to that press release in this slide as well for you folks.
All right, good morning, everyone. We are at the point in time with FY26 monitoring where all of the initial submissions of monitoring items were due back on January 9th. That was Friday. So again, this is only for SAUs who are identified at a medium or high status. If you do not know your monitoring status, it is in Grants for Me listed right on your GAN, and you'd also see a monitoring instrument for ESEA in Grants for Me, just like you have an application section. There's a monitoring instrument section. So we appreciate all the folks who turned in that work already. We're beginning our reviews now, and we will have those initial results to folks by the end of February. All right, and speaking of things that are now past due, the FY25 ESEA performance report, remember that is for all of your fiscal expenditures through 9/30/25 from your FY25 pot of funding. It includes details on your goals from the past school year, all of those expenditures, some data collection we have to do for the federal government, and then importantly for a lot of folks, a Title I waiver request if one is needed for your carryover amounts. It also includes your FY23 closeout. That grant is now in liquidation time here at the state level. You no longer have access to those funds, but we got to close out all of those fiscal records as well. Just like with our application, any sort of feedback when we return it to you folks can be seen on the consultant checklist, and you can always reach out to your regional program manager if you have any questions. If you are a business manager and you're submitting an invoice for a service period after 9/30/25, those will not be approved until the performance report is also approved. So just be aware those may be sitting in the queue. You might see in the history log a comment from Tyra that says can be approved once the PR is approved. But for right now, they're going to have to wait until we get that performance report approved.
So Ryan just mentioned two items that have a due date associated with them, the monitoring items, which were due January 9th, and the performance report for FY25, which was due November 15th. So we wanted to draw your attention to the past due notifications that we as an ESEA team have been sending out for approximately a year now. And what happens is we take a look about 30 days after the due date to confirm that some progress has been made on the items that were due. If you happen to have a performance report, for example, that has not been submitted and there has been no progress made on that FY25 performance report, you will have received a 30-day past due notification. The notification is extremely clear in regards to the next steps in regards to what our team would do should that item not be submitted. So again, we are providing you with the support that you need. We have some resources on our website, and you can always reach out to our regional program manager. Essentially, these past due notifications have been put into place so that we can be sure that we have the information that we need to submit to the U.S. Department of Ed and be sure that we're meeting the timelines associated with our information that we report back. Again, if you have any questions in regards to receiving the letter last week about the 30-day past due for FY25 performance reports, please reach out to your regional program managers. If this is something new and you have not received a past due notification for FY25 monitoring last year or the application for FY26 or FY25 performance report, you are in good standing in regards to the requirements associated with ESEA funding. We also wanted to take some time to draw your attention to FY27 and preparing for equitable services for FY27. As you know, equitable services is a share that is provided from the SAU, the public entity, to the participating non-public schools that are eligible within the boundary lines. This is a training that is required for our non-public officials. So we're asking our SAUs to share this information with the non-public school officials that you consult with and you have that ongoing relationship with. So our team will be hosting a training on Tuesday, March 3rd at 9 a.m. One of my team members, if you don't mind putting the Zoom link in the chat box, that would be greatly appreciated. And we are asking that our SAUs share this information with their non-public officials. Again, this training will be required to receive equitable services in FY27, and that's critical in regards to understanding the allowable uses, how to consult best as an SAU and a non-public school, and some of the financial requirements that are related to equitable services. So this webinar is truly designed for our non-public schools, but extremely helpful for our SAUs to participate in the same timeframe so that that ongoing conversation between the SAU and the non-public is nurtured throughout the process.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm excited to just reintroduce school-wide Title I programming. About half of our Title I schools are school-wide, maybe a little bit more. So that means many schools are running targeted assistance programs and may be interested in shifting to school-wide Title I. This is probably not the first time you've heard me speak on the benefits of school-wide, some of the flexibilities that it can afford. If you're a high poverty school or you're right on the cusp and you want to get a waiver and become a school-wide program to do some of that more comprehensive improvement, Tier 1, Tier 2 instruction, that kind of thing, come to our training. I'm going to be facilitating a training on February 4th at 9 a.m. This could be a great refresher for programs that have been school-wide for a while. Maybe you want to consider what they could be doing, what ways they can pivot or shift with school-wide, or are a new school-wide program and really want to dig in and ask questions about their program. This is definitely past due. If we haven't had a school-wide training, that's going to be really comprehensive, looking at statute, looking at how it interacts with our application and grants for me, looking at how it's budgeted and then invoiced for. So I just think I can't emphasize enough that I think that for schools who want to become school-wide or are school-wide, this could be a really, really good training, and then it might spiral into some other more detail-oriented trainings in the spring. So I'll drop the registration link here in a second for folks that are interested in registering. So it's on your calendar already. I would do that here today. You can always reach out and ask questions. The normal school-wide application process is just to submit those school-wide plans. That's those SAU consolidated templates. And that's usually due. I start looking at those in July to ensure that it meets the statutory requirements of school-wide programming. And I usually offer to set up a meeting and help your school sort of transition. It's a mindset shift, it could be a practice shift, and it could even be a fiscal shift. So important to understand those elements, but not to be too fearful of them, because I think once they're sort of understood by a district administration or school principals for Title I school-wides, you can feel really empowered to do some excellent work improving the school and the instruction in the school. So I think this is just a mega opportunity for all of us to come together and talk really more about what school-wide means in Title I. So come join me, and I'll put the registration link here in a second, or someone else can. And then the other thing that I'm doing this month that I'm really excited about is on Monday, January 26th. For those of you that have been faithful Title I Committee of Practitioner members, thank you. I know we haven't met since I think it was like last March, but some really exciting new features in the quick site for the specific accountability data needed for the comprehensive needs assessment. So around student demographic, subgroups, visualizations around assessment data for these students. And so I just wanted to kind of, in general, I know this does not apply to every SAU. I do know some folks on this call are part of the Title I COP. So I just wanted to, again, reiterate that those calendar invites have gone out. If you're someone whose maybe bandwidth has changed or capacity or desire to be part of the Title I COP has changed, whether you can't be on it anymore or you'd like to join, just email me, because it's fairly easy for me to get you into the COP. They are currently, the Title I practitioners are actually looking at the visualizations that are built into the data of that data platform. So kind of exciting. We're going to have a meeting where we can, folks are going to give me feedback on how it looks. The idea here is to roll this out and have a data inventory for all this accountability data that you can kind of manipulate, compare subgroups, look at different trends, maybe for student homelessness or migrant students. So this is kind of a big deal. So kind of two big deal things for us in the Title I program this month, and will be the Title I COP looking at how we can get more transparent data. So maybe less duplication of those templates and of data crunching and having to, document them by copying and pasting. We're going to remove that. We're going to get more schools to school-wide. And we're going to get folks all sort of anchored in the same data. So reach out if you have questions about either of those things. These are really passion projects for us on the Title I team. And this is some major steps that we're entering into. So reach out, let me know, and maybe I'll see some of you at the Title I COP meeting on the 26th. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am going to just really briefly talk about the notifications that were sent out last week regarding Maine's model school supports. This is Maine's accountability system that's required under ESEA, and it's how we rate, or not how we look at schools and inform schools about how they're meeting state and federal government requirements based on state standards. And that's done through the Maine through-year assessment, but also there are other indicators. So keeping that in mind, we have to make notifications. We have to run Maine's model school support every year, but we don't make identifications every year. It depends on where we are in the cycle. This year, the only new identifications that we made were TSI, which was Targeted School and Improvement. If your school or one of your schools had had CSI or additional targeted support, ATSI, those are not new identifications. The last time we did ATSI was in May of 2024. We did not do it in May of 2025, and we did not do it again in January of this year. The next time we will do ATSI identifications will be in the fall of 2029. It's every 6 years. CSI, there were no new CSI identifications. The last time we did CSI identifications was in May of 2024. We did not make new identifications for CSI in May of 2025, and we did not make any new CSI identifications this last week. If those identifications are standing out, ATSI or CSI, that means that that school did not meet or was not eligible to meet the exit requirements for ATSI. So I know there's a lot of confusion. People are like, this is a new identification. The only new identifications are TSI. So to keep that in mind. CSIR is for those schools that were eligible to exit CSI, but because they did not meet the CSI requirements, they are still considered to be CSI. You are in that status. You are in CSI and ATSI status until you exit until you meet those exit criteria. TSI is only a 1-year identification status. So you're on it for a year, and then every year we make new ones. So you can be on it for the same reason each year, or you can be on it for different reasons. Not identified for support. Getting some questions about that. Do want to say that we tried to keep it very simple this year, and we used one letter. And yes, it was a kind of a form letter. So we just plugged in SAUs. So the first part of the letter, actually, well, I'll get to that in the next slide. So I will address that in the next slide. But just wanted to let people know that there is the identification criteria, and then there's also the exit criteria, and they're not the same. So, so just to give you an idea, like we only made identifications for TSI for this year, and we did not for ATSI and CSI. We will make new CSI identifications in the fall of 2026 because we do those every 3 years. I think you can go to the next slide. So we have to make annual school notifications every year. We're doing it in 3 phases this year. In the last 2 years, we did not get the identifications out until the May. We're supposed to do it in the fall. We hope to do it in the fall of this year, but with data quality assurance and all of that, it took us a little longer. So this is directly from the letter that was sent out last week. We sent out 202 notifications because there are 202 SAUs. The notification went out to the SAU because that is what's written in statute, that the SAU needs to be notified of the school's identification status under Maine's Model School Support, or in the statute, it's Maine State Accountability System. Because there are schools that, so that went through the ESEA consolidated application. I'm getting emails about, well, I didn't get that notification. You need to go into your FY26 ESEA consolidated application, go into the history log, and that copy of that letter is in there. And we did CC it to the person or the contact person for the LEA authorized representative, the LEA fiscal representative. We sent it to the LEA ESEA coordinator, and we also sent it to anyone who had LEA view because we figured that's how the principals would see it as well. We said for each identified school, this SEU must develop a plan. So depending on what type of identification that the schools are in your SAU, that's what the requirements will be. Now, if your school or one of your schools or the only school in your district, because we do have quite a few SAUs in the state of Maine that have one school. So if your school had an NIFS as their identification status, that means that they were not identified for support, which means that you do not have any requirements under Maine's Model School Support. I know the letter might have said you had requirements, but if you read the first line, it said for each identified school. And we did try to have a form letter because we didn't want to have to send out 5 different types of letters. We tried to keep it simple because we know you get a lot of correspondence, and we were trying to keep it as simple as possible. So there are 3 types of school improvement plans. There is the CSI, there's the ATSI, and the TSI. You default to, like I said, you can have multiple identification statuses, but we default to the highest status. So CSI is the highest status. So if that's what your status is, that's what you'll default to. And the school improvement plan requirements are embedded in the FY26, what we call school improvement grant application. So those requirements are in that. If you're ATSI or TSI. I'll talk about that on what that can look like on the next slide. But really the only difference between the three types of plans are number 2, and that is that CSI and ATSI plans require resource and equities, where you have to address what resource and equities are with those schools, and that needs to be implemented in the school improvement plan. Do note that the SAU must monitor the implementation of the school improvement plans on a continuous basis and adjust plans as needed. For schools that are CSI, I already talked about that. CSI schools do get additional funds, and they also are required to complete a school improvement grant, which we manage through Grants for Me, which is our federal grant management system. And those plans do have to be approved by the U.S. Department of Education, but that's done through the school improvement grant application. TSI and ATS plans and other accompanying documentation are kept at the school site and are only provided when requested by the Maine DOE. This could be through, if the SAU is selected for ESEA monitoring, then we'll want to see the TSI and ATSI plans. Next slide. So the Maine's model school profiles, the 25-26, they include the indicators and student populations that are rendering the school identification status. They're currently being updated to reflect 24-25 data. If you go on to Maine's model school support right now, you will not, they are not updated yet. It takes a lot of time. There are 202 SAUs. There are over 500 schools that get run through the model. So it does take a little time to get all of that situated. We take a lot of your feedback into account. We're trying to make it an easier system to use. And so it does take time to go through that. SAUs will be notified when the 25-26 school profiles are updated on the MMS section of the ESEA dashboard. In the meantime, the other areas of the ESEA dashboard have been updated to reflect 24-25 data and are available for viewing. So if you go on the ESEA dashboard, you will see different like squares. All the white squares have been updated with 24-25 data. Maine's model school support has not been updated yet. So if you go on that, you're going to see accountability year 24-25, which reflects 23-24 data. I get a lot of questions about like, what about 25-26 data? We're in 25-26, so we can't really have 25-26 data when we're currently in that year. So, and I also get a lot of questions about types of plans. So the comprehensive needs assessment is what's required for SAUs. The Title I school-wide plan is what's required for schools that are operating a Title I school-wide plan or program. And school improvement plans are required for any school that's identified for TSI, ATSI, and CSI. We don't tell SAUs or schools what type of vehicle they need to use for their school improvement plans. But whatever you do decide to use, it needs to meet the requirements that were on the previous page. So if you decide to use your CNA, your district CNA, you need to make sure that it meets the requirements for school improvement. If you decide to use your Title I school-wide plan to meet your ATSI or TSI, you need to make sure that it meets the requirements, includes all the requirements for ATSI and TSI plans. I can tell you that we did get a finding from the U.S. Department of Education because we did say, oh, a district could use their district CNA, and we got a finding because it was written from a district perspective and not from a school perspective. So remember, it needs to be a school improvement plan, and it needs to be based on those requirements that are in the letter. If your school is not identified for support, then you don't need to meet all those requirements. So I think and the other thing is we get a lot of questions about accountability year and data year. So remember, accountability year is kind of a year behind. We're trying to work on that. We're actually really proud of ourselves because the last 2 years we didn't get identifications out until May. We got them out in January, and we're hoping to even make that sooner next year. Sometimes the data collection is what holds us up, and then the QAing of the data. I get a lot of questions about where the data comes from. The data comes from schools. We don't make up the data. The data does get run through the model, which basically means that you have your Acacia data, which is your own student level data. Then you have the ESSA dashboard, which is more of a compilation of data. Um, and then when it gets run through the model, these are things like we have the 6 indicators. And then we have on the ESSA dashboard, everything will get posted. That's if you have 5 or more students on the ESSA dashboard, it's 10. So if you have less than 10, it doesn't get counted in the model. If you have students that are not enrolled for 90 days between October 1st and the first day of the Maine through-year assessment, those students do not get counted in the model. So those are like the main features of it. And there's also student populations that are counted on the ESSA dashboard, but they're not included in Maine's model school support. So what I tell schools to do is, in the meantime, you can get a broader picture of where you are. You can go onto your Acacia data. You should have a general idea of what student populations and what areas are areas of need. You can go on the ESSA dashboard and you can see more of a broader perspective of that. So that when the school profiles are updated and ready for viewing, it shouldn't be a big surprise. We might have the numbers might be a little different because we've been able to take some of the students out, but I think there shouldn't be a lot of surprises. Also, remember that you like ATSI, even though your schools may have gone up, you still need to have so many years of showing growth to be able to exit ATSI and CSI status. So there's a lot of pieces to school improvement. I get a lot of requests, well, can't you just do a 2-pager? I'm like, not really, because, or can't you do a general? I've done general meetings before, and no school is identified for the same reason. So I do encourage people that once they go through their school profiles, if they have questions, they can reach out to me. I have no problem going through and walking through the school profiles with different districts or schools. But I ask that you go on first and try to look around because there's a lot of information on there. Uh, but it's hard to do one for like just a general because I guarantee no school has been identified for the same reason as another school. It's very nuanced. So I know there's a lot of questions in the chat. I didn't look at them because I didn't want to get thrown off from the presentation, but I don't know, Shelley, are there any that I should address? I know you guys have been looking at the chat. Is there anything that I haven't addressed yet?
So I did my very best to capture the responses of the questions. I would encourage you to take a look at them, Monique, and just confirm their accuracy
Okay.
as we move on to the next content, and we can
Okay.
open up the floor
Sounds
at the
good.
end for additional questions. Thank
Yep.
you.
All right, good morning, folks. Just kind of circling back to the Title III subgrant for immigrant children and youth. Last month, we kind of let everybody know that this was coming out, and we're getting ready to make the award for FY26. And after running all the data, we are excited to announce that Waterville Public Schools is the recipient for this year's Immigrant Children and Youth Subgrant. They're getting just over an additional $25,000 to support their immigrant students. And we really hope that, this really helps them out with this growing population.
Good morning, everyone. I am Tyra Corson. I am the ESEA Management Analyst, and I review all the fiscal elements for the ESEA Consolidated Application and School Improvement Grants. I'm excited to let you know that coming right up, we will have our Federal Fiscal Office Hour. If you're not familiar with the Federal Fiscal Office Hour, this is a team of experts, I guess you would say, in the fiscal nature across all federal programs for the DOE. It's a good time for you to get updates from each program. This particular meeting, we will discuss how much was left on the table for expiring funds, and also dig deeper into contracts and when they can be signed and those types of things. So if you have any questions or topics that you would like us to review during that office hour, please email them to me at tyra.corson@maine.gov. Next slide. So this slide is letting you know that effective January 1st of 2026, the IRS has increased the mileage rate to 0.725. I don't know why they carry it out 3 digits, but they do. The state of Maine rate is currently at 56 cents a mile. It was just updated in November. I expect another update this November. As a general practice, we recommend that you review your procurement policies. Travel reimbursement is a procurement policy, a type of procurement policy, at least every 3 years. And certainly, if your travel reimbursement policy indicates that you are using the IRS rate, that is great, as long as there's not an amount included, because that obviously gets updated every January, and you don't want to have to go back and have your policy reapproved by the board. If you are using the per diem rate at gsa.gov, I found on their website that taxes and gratuities are included in those per diem rates under meals and incidental expenses. So again, your policy may indicate that you, no matter what, are going to reimburse up to a certain dollar amount per meal. That is fine. I do suggest that you might want to look into putting taxes and gratuity into your policy, because it still has to be reasonable, right? Like gratuity for half of the bill is not reasonable. Next slide. So FY26 ESEA funding timing, we know that there was a delay in federal funding. I encourage everyone to look at their substantial approval dates. Certainly, if your SAU did not request pre-award costs, a lot of expenses are being rejected because they were obligated before the substantial approval date of these funds. Title 1 and 5 got substantial approval first because they were awarded to the state first. So your substantial approval dates for 2, 3, and 4 may differ from your Titles 1 and 5. So this is straight from the Code of Federal Regulations when obligations are made. One of the takeaways is contracts. I get a lot of questions regarding contracts and if they can be split over 2 grants, or in this case, 2 grant years. The bottom line is the contract must be signed and dated. So any date within the contract documents cannot be prior to your substantial approval date. Contracted services must be obligated, the services received, and expensed. Expense means that you have paid an invoice for the services that were received within the period of performance for the grant. So just be very careful, especially recently we've had SAUs asking if they can contract for ESEA coordinator services. So you're looking at next school year right now. Do not enter a contract that you want FY27 funds to pay for before you receive substantial approval. And if you are considering a contract for ESEA coordinator, I would suggest requesting pre-award costs in your FY27 if that is the grant year that you want to pay for that position. Next slide. Invoicing and grants for Maine. When submitting an invoice and grants for Maine and you receive an error, the error says you cannot request those funds in that category. So say you need to request $5,000 in supplies, but you only have $4,000 available in supplies. The system is going to give you an error. It just means that you have overspent in a budgeted category and a budget revision is necessary in your application. When requesting the budget revision in the application, once it is complete and resubmitted back to the DOE, your RPM will review and approve it. It is until after the approval, you can then submit that invoice, but you must delete any previous invoicing attempts and start again because the system doesn't automatically update on the invoicing side. Next slide. Backup documentation has not changed, although I do receive questions when you are asking for purchase services, reimbursement for purchase services or travel. The receipts are not automatically uploaded in your first initial request. I need to see those receipts. We need to make sure that, again, the obligation is done timely, the classes are taken timely, and an invoice for the charges that are being paid for. All requests must have at least a detailed trial balance with them. Are you waiting for payment for an FY25 invoice? If you review the history log, because I am current with approvals, if you have been waiting for more than a week for your reimbursement, you should probably go into the system and check the history log. If you see there that it says okay to pay with approved PR meaning performance report, that means that your FY25 ESEA performance report that was due in November has not been approved yet. Once the performance report is approved, then the invoice will be moved for payment. This slide is just a reminder of the possible funds that you have available to you to use in your schools. Take notice that we have a lot of grants expiring this year. 9/30/26. You should have already expensed approximately 50% of any of these grants. Actually, the FY26 grant should be about 50% expense. So if you're struggling to do that or to get caught up, feel overwhelmed, please reach out. Let's work together and get you all caught up and let's bankrupt these grants.
All right, good morning, everyone. We do want to take a quick moment to remind everyone that the department offers a multitude of both free and low-cost professional development opportunities for both school administrative units and non-public schools throughout the year. We encourage folks to be regularly checking the department's PD calendar, which I have just shared in chat, for upcoming opportunities that may be of interest to you or your staff. I do also want to personally encourage folks to be sharing this as a resource with your teachers and other school staff, particularly those who may be in need of contact hours in order to meet their certification or recertification requirements. Should you have any questions related to any of the information we've shared this morning, or any other questions related to your ongoing ESEA work following today's presentation, we would encourage you to reach out to the appropriate member of our team. For most questions, that'll be the ESEA Regional Program Manager that is supporting the superintendent region your SAU is located within. With that, we just want to thank everyone for their time and attention this morning, and